The world's best defenders freeze. JJ Okocha, a player so brilliant, so filled with pure, unfiltered joy that the history books literally recorded him as being so good they named him twice. Nigeria didn't just play football, they exported pure theater. They were the crown jewels of African football, winning Olympic gold in 1996 by defeating giants like Brazil and Argentina. They possessed a pipeline of raw talent that seemed completely infinite. But fast forward to today, the world is preparing for the biggest World Cup in human history, and Nigeria, a nation of over 200 million people, a continent's football superpower, is completely absent, knocked out, devastated. How does a nation with some of the most lethal strikers on earth collapse into an abyss of missed qualifications, player strikes, and toxic administrative warfare? This isn't a story of a lack of talent. This is the tragic anatomy of a giant systematically destroying itself from within. To understand how tragic the current state of Nigerian football is, you first have to look at what they should be. Right now, on paper, Nigeria boasts an attacking arsenal that can rival almost any elite European nation. They have Victor Osimhen, a Scudetto winner and African Footballer of the Year. They have Ademola Lookman, tearing up European finals. But it goes deeper. Imagine a world where the global system didn't drain Nigeria's pipeline. If every elite player eligible to represent Nigeria actually chose to play for them, the Super Eagles wouldn't just be qualifying for World Cups, they would be genuine contenders to win them. The raw material is there, the passion is an unstoppable cultural force. Yet football is a delicate ecosystem. It requires structure, stability, and trust, and it is precisely at this intersection of talent and management where the tragedy of the Super Eagles truly begins. The collapse didn't happen overnight. It is the result of a devastating, repeating loop of administrative failure. Let's look at a timeline. In 2026, ahead of the most critical World Cup qualifying playoffs, news broke that sent shockwaves through the football world. The Super Eagles boycotted training. Why? Because the federation failed to pay their bonuses and allowances. If this sounds like an isolated incident, it isn't. This exact same script has been playing out for a quarter of a century. In 2019, 2014, 2010, and all the way back to 2001, the story remains flawlessly identical. Same script, same year, same result. Remains flawlessly identical. Players fly halfway across the world to represent their flag, only to find themselves locked in hotel lobbies arguing over money they were promised months ago. Think about the psychological tax of this system. While elite European squads are analyzing tactical videos, sleeping in hyperbaric chambers, and focusing purely on the pitch, Nigerian players are spending their nights acting as negotiators, unions, and fighters just to get basic professional respect from their own federation. You can settle the paperwork hours before a match, but you cannot magically heal a fractured, exhausted mind. When administration fails, logistics turn into a weapon. We saw this reaching a tipping point during their travels, such as the infamous incident where the entire squad was left stranded at an abandoned airport in Libya for over 16 hours without food, water, or security. In these moments of crisis, a strange dynamic emerges. Players are forced to become their own public relations managers, using social media to scream for help. Senior players like William Troost-Ekong have to act as shield bearers off the pitch. But when players are forced to spend all their energy fighting logistical wars, leadership on the pitch inevitably crumbles. The absolute rock bottom of this culture of dysfunction came after Nigeria's shocking elimination from the 2026 World Cup race at the hands of DRC. Instead of taking accountability for delayed salaries, catastrophic preparation, and fractured tactics, the narrative took a bizarre turn. The management publicly hinted that the defeat wasn't due to administrative failure, but rather voodoo or spiritual manipulation by the opposition. When a multi-million-dollar football operation resorts to blaming superstition for its own tactical and structural inadequacy, it signals a complete death of accountability. It proves that the leadership would rather look into the supernatural than look into the mirror. While Nigeria is trapped in this endless loop of self-destruction, we have to look at what other African nations are doing. Look at Morocco. While Nigeria missed out, Morocco has spent the last decade rewriting the entire playbook for African football on the global stage. Morocco didn't look for quick fixes, and they certainly didn't look to the supernatural. In 2009, a massive royal directive launched a multi-million-dollar overhaul of the country's entire football infrastructure. They built the world-class Mohammed VI Football Academy. They standard-built pitches, stadiums, and elite training facilities, funding them systematically through state partnerships and long-term planning. The result? They didn't just qualify, they became the first African and Arab nation in human history to reach a FIFA World Cup semi-final. Their players don't arrive at training camps wondering if their allowances will be paid or if they'll be trapped at airports. They arrive into an elite, finely tuned machine designed entirely to help them win. Morocco proved to the world that when an African nation pairs raw, street-bred talent with flawless professional administration, the sky is the absolute limit. This stark contrast brings us directly to the warning of renowned academic P.L.O. Lumumba. He perfectly diagnosed why supergiants like Nigeria continuously falter while others rise. He argues that too many African governments view sports as an afterthought, a recreational game, rather than a massive engine for national pride and GDP. Because Nigeria refuses to build the modern infrastructure required to sustain the sport domestically, their system remains open to what can only be described as sporting colonization. Foreign scouts and agents swoop in early, harvesting raw African talent for pennies, exporting them to Europe, and commercializing them for billions. Nigeria produces the diamonds, but because they refuse to build the factories to polish them at home, they remain entirely at the mercy of foreign structures. The wealth, the knowledge, and ultimately the control of the sport stay far away from Abuja or Lagos. So, the ultimate question remains: can Nigeria ever return to its former glory? Can the Super Eagles ever recapture the magic of the 1990s when players like J.J. Okocha made the entire planet fall in love with African football? The answer is a resounding yes, but it requires a revolution of accountability. Nigeria's football crisis is a profound tragedy because it is entirely self-inflicted. The Super Eagles do not need a miracle to fly again. They don't need to look for excuses in the supernatural, and they don't need to look for a new generation of players. The talent is already here. The passion of over 200 million people is ready to explode. What they need is to look at Morocco, look at the world, and realize that talent is only the raw fuel. Structure is the vehicle. Nigeria needs an administration that respects the shirts its stars wear. They need the political will to invest in their own soil. Until the war within the federation ends, the greatest players in Africa will continue to be grounded, not by their opponents on the grass, but by the system meant to make them soar.